Bigfoot, Bigfoot, roaming through the land. Bigfoot, Bigfoot, a hairy ape-like man.
Hello, my friends and fellow Bigfoot enthusiasts. Welcome to Bigfoot Today, the show that's all about Bigfoot. I'm your host, Stephen Major, and with me is Mitch the Man Johnson, my co-host.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate very much having this opportunity to go on this epic journey with you. I think it's going to be very good. I think for the audience, they need to understand that this is going to be totally different than all the other Bigfoot shows and experts out there. The best way to explain what's out there right now, it's kind of like yesterday's bubble gum. It's been all chewed up and there's no more flavor. And we're going to add some flavor to the discussion. So I guess without any further ado.
Well said, my friend, because that's the point we're trying to make with this show. There's so many shows out there right now that are about Bigfoot, and most of them are retreading and rechewing the same old bubblegum. Well, that's not what we want to do here. We want to make this show fun and exciting, and we want to explore a lot of controversial issues that revolve around Bigfoot investigations. And so we're going to have a myriad of guests over the next 6 episodes that are coming here, and they're going to share with us their points of views, their evidence, and recent discoveries here in Washington State. And now for a short break, and we'll be right back.
This show is sponsored by Extreme Expeditions Northwest LLC, your gateway to adventure, specializing in guided Bigfoot expeditions to Alaska and throughout the Pacific Northwest and Canada.
Welcome back, my friends, and now we're going to move into what's new in Bigfoot today. In this segment, Mitch and I are going to discuss any new latest sightings or events that are happening. Mitch, what have you heard?
Not a lot. I haven't really put the tentacles out there, but a couple of issues though that I've noticed with Bigfoot is if people have a sighting, they don't tell it to anybody. They're still ashamed, like they're going to be thrown in the loony bin or something like that. So you have that phenomenon. After I started posting Sasquatch on Facebook, I had 3 clients come to me with very, very credible stories of things that have happened a long time ago. So that's part of the problem we have, is that people don't want to actually just come forward. I mean, my goodness,
Yeah.
The other thing is the timing of it. And our guest later on the show brought that up, that it reminds me of when I go fishing in Alaska with my dad, and this is the deal in Alaska. People will say, oh, you better watch out for those grizzly bears. They're all over the place. And then you'll say, really? They'll go, yep, see that evergreen over there? And you'll say, yeah. Yep, in 1932, saw a grizzly bear right there, so you be careful. So the timing is hard. Not to say that they didn't see it, but we're trying to get more current sightings. We all know about Bluff Creek in 1967. We just want to know what's going on now. We can all read a history book. We want to kind of tell the story before it hits print.
I agree with you on that because, in the last 3 years, I've advertised repeatedly for people to come forward with sightings and stuff like that. And most people, they're afraid to come forward.
A little hesitant, yeah.
They're a little hesitant about that because they're thinking they might be subject to ridicule or, and even some of them, that have come forward as well and shared their experiences. They've been very traumatic, and it's been something that's hung with them for a long time, and they were afraid to share it because they really didn't want to revisit that experience.
Sure.
And stuff. And you bring up the Bluff Creek thing. I mean, that seems to be the paramount Bigfoot incident, case that's talked about, beat to death. Here just recently in social media and stuff, it seems like every 3 to 6 months, somebody's coming out with a new analysis of this film,
Right.
and they just keep beating it to death.
Right.
And it would be really nice if someone came forward with something a little newer. Now, I understand why the film's important. Don't get me wrong with that.
Sure.
I understand that very well. One of the things that makes the film important, in my opinion, is that it is the longest continuous film of a Sasquatch that is exposed and in the open.
Right.
And so you're able to analyze it. Now, there's some other people that are well-known, Bigfoot experts that have been running around the country and on the coast of BC who have posted a number of things recently. And what you find is it's a blurry segment that lasts anywhere from 30 seconds, and they're claiming, well, this is a Sasquatch that we caught on Vancouver Island recently or something.
Right. And I was speaking to our guests about that before the show, and isn't it interesting? In all this time, the best video is from a Super 8 movie camera.
Yeah, there you go.
Being handheld
Right.
and shook as you're getting
Right.
off the horse.
Yeah.
Really? That's the best?
Yeah.
Even cell phones, have better definition. So it just raises a lot of questions, But that still is kind of what everything is judged by. It's the benchmark,
That's
the
a
Patterson
good way
Gimlin film.
It absolutely is, and absolutely is. I know in our expeditions when we go out and stuff, that was our main goal, and that has been our main goal, is to get in current time with today's modern technology, photographic and stuff like that, is to get the equivalent of the Patterson film.
Yes.
In today, and let me tell you, it's a lot harder than it looks. I mean, they just have to be at the right time and all of that. But I would really like to move beyond that and see Bigfoot get beyond that.
Yes.
But it seems like we're kind of stuck in this mode where nobody can come up with anything even remotely close to that, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Now, there's been a few that people have claimed that Sasquatch. There was one, I think down in by Yakima or something, where it's running through a field and stuff like that, but it's too far away. Nothing that can allow you to do an objective analysis to the degree of that.
Right. I'm hoping that with more and more dash cams out there, my insurance agent said, have a dash cam on your car, because then if you are in an accident, now you have video that it was or was not. Well, if it was your fault, you're going to lose the camera. But if it isn't your fault, you're going to show that to the police. So, and a lot of Sasquatch sightings are on roads. So hopefully, as more and more people, and they're not that expensive, have a dash cam, maybe we'll start seeing some video. Because Sasquatch doesn't just sit and pose. You got to be ready.
Right. I agree with you. And we did ask initially when we started advertising the show that if you were interested, if you would like to submit a sighting or any evidence like that. We did receive a few. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk about those on the show. However, as far as what's new and recent, I would like to say we've got a couple here, right here in Pend Oreille County, and also one in Stevens County, and another one in Spokane County. It seems that we've got a report. I don't have all the details of a road sighting just this October. There was a road sighting up on the Loon Lake area. On the highway, evidently, an individual caught a large 7 to 8 foot hairy beast running across the road. So that was a recent sighting here. And then we've had a couple just last springtime up around the Sullivan Lake area in Pend Oreille County. We had another road sighting up there. Like I said, we don't have complete details on the reports, but there's been a few. But that's really about it right now. We'd really encourage you, if you have had a sighting, we hold everything in confidence unless you give us a release of information, your permission to actually talk about it. But we would like some more submissions on recent sightings of Bigfoot, because we really haven't got a lot going on here now. But then
That's
again,
correct.
As far as events and things like that, COVID really put the hammer down.
They did, yeah.
It really did, and unfortunately, we had to cancel our Sasquatch Roundup for this year, which we've rescheduled it for next year. Hopefully, the COVID thing will be fine, but we really don't have a lot of recent news. Anything else?
No, not really. It's nothing other than my own personal experience. I think it was 2 years ago now, up by Priest Lake. My wife and I were staying at Elkins.
Priest Lake.
Yeah, and we were staying at Elkins, and we just we're gonna take the dogs for a walk. That was it, and it was definitely tree knocks, without a doubt. As a kid, we would take a baseball bat and we would hit a tree. Why? Because we're stupid kids. But that's the sound. And then the knocks followed us. It was as though we were being marked. About every 50 yards, there'd be another knock at a right angle. So, if you got nothing else going on, go up to Elkins or Hills Resort, take your significant other and just get away from all the madness. And who knows, maybe on a hike you'll experience something. So
That's interesting. And that's a Priest Lake?
Yeah, Priest Lake. Yep.
Okay.
Elkins Resort, and then Hills Resort is the other one. Okay. And Elkins has been there for generations now. Really nice.
I've never been there.
Yeah.
And I haven't really heard a lot from that area.
Yeah, no, and I
wouldn't have thought.
If I had, I probably wouldn't have gone on the walk.
Yeah,
so next time I go, I will definitely have my 12 gauge with the slug in it, just in case. But yeah, not that I want to shoot it. But that's a different show. when is it okay or not okay to shoot a Sasquatch? But that's a whole different. That's coming up on a future episode.
Do you ever wear any safety gear like this to, to
I just
alert
talk
them to your
loud.
presence?
I find just talking loud.
The dinner bell.
The dinner bell.
Sorry about
It's
that.
a good idea. The blowhorn you had earlier. That's a good idea. But
I picked this up at at the advice of a sporting goods salesman the first time I did an expedition up on Vancouver Island in 2017, and he said this was the most modern gear that you should wear for self-protection while out there because you have a bear problem. But I thought it sounds more like a dinner bell than anything else.
it kind of does.
But the first time I wore it and went out, I noticed I was being followed by bears everywhere that I went, which kind of signaled me, okay, we'll get rid of the dinner bell.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of insulting Bigfoot's intelligence. Like, ooh, there's a little reindeer bell. I'm going to run the other way because, oh boy, that's scary. So, yeah. And I think Pavlov's dog being what it is, I just think grizzly bears would be like, hey, dinner time.
Right. I always thought that was hilarious. I understand that a lot of people who bear hunt up on Vancouver Island, whenever they will find numerous piles of large scat, and for some reason they seem to contain one of these. So we'll leave that alone for right now. So, not a lot on the sightings and activity right now. However, one thing that 2020 has blessed us with, regardless of the COVID thing, is new Bigfoot movies.
Yes.
And there's just a ton of them. And there's a lot of good ones. And every week we'd like to take a movie that's new and recent that we thought that was interesting, and we'd like to do a review of it, and we'd like to share it with you in case you did. And we have one of those that
Yes.
we've watched.
Yep.
And I just want to say, generally, this is a fiction film that we're going to talk about here. We're going to show you the trailer, and we're going to discuss about what we liked about it and what we didn't. Normally, we wouldn't deviate from documentary type content about Bigfoot expeditions and evidence and things like that. But frankly speaking, most of them that came out this last year were just boring as heck. And once again, they were just rehashing, recovering the same old things. Set an apple on a log. Next frame, apple's gone. Had to be Bigfoot. Or blur video that only lasts a few seconds, and that's got to be Bigfoot, but we don't know about. It's the same old typical things. And so this is a first fiction movie that's came out in 2020 that I've seen that I thought was absolutely enjoyable. And the movie that we're going to show you the trailer on, that we're going to talk about here, is called Bigfoot, Path of the Beast. And it was released in 2020. The film is roughly an hour and 30 minutes in length. And the synopsis is this. After the mysterious disappearance of his depressed wife, a man dealing with alcoholism seeks revenge by killing a Bigfoot creature and escaping the wilderness alive as he deals with his own insanity and the wrath of other creatures. And the directors of the film were Zach Bowman and Justin Snyder, and the writer was Justin Snyder, and it stars Justin Snyder, Matthew Poling, Samantha Weller, and a few other folks. So let's take a look at the trailer. We'll come right back after we play this for you.
I'll show everyone.
Well, Mitch, what did you think about that film?
I think as for entertainment, I thought it was very good. It's definitely worth it to watch it. And it's not really the type of movie I watch, the scary movies. I guess I'm a wimp that way. But it just brings up a whole lot of things that I've thought about for a long time that we'll get into later episodes, like, and basically we'll have some guests, Native American guests and also First Nation guests about the culture and the history. If I was in that culture and they say, what happened to that guy? Yeah, Sasquatch got him. And that would be it. And there's quite a few people I can think of. I wish it was that easy. So you kind of wonder, and then is this based on a real events where, a man's wife disappeared and he tried to blame Sasquatch? I'd like to do some more research of where they came up with the idea, because that's the problem. I think the beast of Sasquatch it's only there because people have used it as an excuse for violence. I don't think Bigfoot is violent. There's no real evidence to that. Even Port Chatham, I've got some good theories on that one, but we're going to save that for later.
Yeah. No, I got to tell you, I did try to research the history behind the film, and I didn't have a lot of time on it. And so honestly, I kind of looked online and stuff like that to see if maybe it was based on a true story or something,
Okay.
and I couldn't find where it was.
Okay.
But what really intrigued me there's a couple of things about this movie that really intrigued me. And the one that got me in the trailer was the obsession. You know, this guy, even the scenario where, you know, he's obsessed about finding Bigfoot because his wife was kidnapped or disappeared. I mean, that was one aspect of it. But this guy, if you watch the film, I mean, he is like totally obsessed with this. And it's to the point where it's driving him crazy. And then they throw in the drinking and the alcoholism. And I thought that they threw in a lot of the drinking scene and stuff like that. I could empathize with this guy's obsession about finding Bigfoot and finding what happened to his wife and stuff. And in the acting, I thought the acting was really good, you know, and I don't even know what their budget was. Yeah. But I thought that the acting in it was pretty good. And then some of it was really humorous.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he goes to it's like a Bigfoot meeting or something, and there's all these so-called Bigfoot experts that are talking to people, and they're sharing sharing their expertise on Bigfoot, and he stands up and he says a few things, and he's like, he causes all this ruckus in there because he kind of exposes, I think, in my opinion, just the the lack of credibility of a lot of people that try to pass him off as.
Oh, absolutely.
Because none of us are Bigfoot experts. I mean, unless you got a Bigfoot or you grew up with a Bigfoot, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because most everything is conjecture at this point.
Right.
In that. And so I enjoyed the film. It was somewhat exciting. And as far as, I got to be honest with you, The Legend of Boggy Creek scared me more than this movie did. Mm-hmm. And so they classified it as a horror, but it was an interesting.
Anyone who is saying it's not a good movie, then I would challenge them to watch the movie and then go camping by themselves. And then we'll see. Then we'll see just how brave they are. Because it's real easy sitting in your living room in your recliner and you're all brave and all that. Yeah. But you watch this movie, and then, of course, The Legend of Boggy Creek and stuff, and then you're there by yourself, and there's no cell phone coverage, there's no TV. Yeah, we'll see what your mind starts doing.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a good challenge.
It would. And like I said, there were some other spots in the movie that were really good, and he returns to the scene where his wife disappeared, and it's nighttime, and he's got a rifle over his shoulder, and then he has I haven't seen one of those box camera for years, the kind where you could buy them for like $5 at the drugstore, and it has a little flash on it. Okay. And he's walking through, and it's at night, and he's in that area where these Bigfoots are, right? And he's in that area, and he's got the little camera in one hand, and he's just walking along, and he has his hip flask in the other hand. And he's just walking along, and he's just drinking firearm, and he's stopping every now and then, and he's just snapping photos into the pitch black. Sure. And stuff. And anyway.
Because we all know hunting with a loaded weapon and drinking, they do go hand in hand. There's so many actual real stories of great outcomes there. But it does feed into one of my ideas for one of our future shows is what type of ammo should you have? And I'm pretty sure a long gun, hunting rifle is not what you want for close up.
Well, yeah, close up. He actually, in the movie, he really tried to cover his bases, if you recall. He had that looks like a 1928 .38 police special, which he had that nice revolver.
But that ain't gonna stop Bigfoot.
And then he carried a shotgun and a rifle.
Okay, that's true.
In the hip flask, all at the same time.
That's good.
He covered all of his bases.
He covered all his bases there. Yeah.
But in any event, I thought it was an intriguing movie. It was very enjoyable to watch. I wouldn't really call it a horror movie. But more of a drama. But there were some things in it that were funny. But near the end of the movie, it's almost the ending scene, and I don't want to ruin it for you, but you got to see the part which I had to play it over again because it was just it was wonderful. And I don't want to give away too much of the movie, but you have to watch the movie, if nothing else, just to see the scene where he's running away from Sasquatch, and this huge Sasquatch comes running out of the bush behind him, and you think, oh my gosh, he's going to just totally rip this guy to pieces. And it's funny, and he's running, and he's running, and he's running, and all of a sudden the Bigfoot, you can see him gaining on him, and then the Bigfoot just comes up and just gives him a big smack on the back of the head and then turns around. And he falls over. So anyways,
Yeah.
that's enough on that film. But if you get a chance, I recommend the film. I definitely give it a 4 stars for entertainment.
Yeah.
Really do for for a fiction movie. And once again, the movie is Bigfoot, Path of the Beast. It's available on Amazon. Is where I watched it, and I believe it's also on Vimeo right now. So that's
Okay.
that.
That's that. That's that.
Okay, my friends. Well, we're going to take a break here, and we will be back after this break with our guests. Really excited to have these people on the show today. We have Bill Bisson from Medellin Falls, Washington, and we have filmmaker Marshall White from Medellin Falls as well. And they're going to be talking about the ongoing research they're doing up there and also presenting some of their evidence. And we're going to talk about an upcoming film they have.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Wonderful.
This show is sponsored by the Private Money Store Incorporated. They specialize in private real estate lending for commercial or business purposes in Washington State.
Welcome back to the show, my friends. And once again, we're going to invite in our guest now. We have Bill Bisson from Medellin, Washington, who is a Bigfoot researcher and adventurer. And also we have Marshall White from Medellin Falls of Marshall White Productions, who's a filmmaker. And these two guys work together. They've been doing a lot of things up in Pend Oreille County, and please welcome them here. Hey, thank you so much for coming in today. Good to see you. Good to see you. Wow.
All right.
Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, I always have to start out with one question, and this is the first one. I'm going to ask Bill. I'm going to start with you first, and that is, what got you interested in Bigfoot?
Well, God, a long time ago, when I was 17, I was out hunting, and I came across some tracks that went across a dirt road, and of course, vehicles, the width of the vehicles. I came across, and there's one set of prints, and on the other side of that was prints, and I started following them off through the grass, and being a hunter and stuff, I knew they weren't bear tracks or anything. And I when I was a young man, my grandmother used to always like to take me to like Chariots of the Gods and Gimlin Patterson Bigfoot films and stuff like this, and so I was always intrigued with all this. I wouldn't say that I actually believed, but it was it's always I'm kind of a realist, and when I seen those prints, I followed them for a little ways, and then they went off into the rocks and stuff, and I couldn't follow them anymore. But I went back to hunting and normal things. I didn't say anything to anybody. Well, about I think it was back in February after the hunting season. There was an article that came out in our little town paper in the area about some gentlemen that were about 8 miles west of me, and they had talked about having some Bigfoot prints along this power line that they found. So it was in this article. So that kind of vindicated what I had seen, because I didn't want to say nothing to nobody, because you didn't want to have people go, oh yeah, you're a little bit in the head, So anyway, as it carries along, life goes on, work, family, and everything else. I kind of like doing prospecting and stuff, a lot of outdoor things, and so as Stephen, you're you had this Bigfoot roundup, and I came down to it, and so I was chatting with Stephen a little bit, and we got to understand that what his Bigfoot research is. Well, when I was up at Medellin, and I was up in the area doing some prospecting, gold prospecting, my wife went up there camping, and we had a little camp trailer canopy, and so one night about 3 o'clock in the morning, within that time, I heard a noise that woke me up. Well, I sleep light anyway, but it was strange, and and it popped off with like a woohoo or wahoo. And I was like, well, this is strange because we're right in the middle of the creek down in the bottom of this creek area. And then it did it again. Well, what I realized was, as the back of my canopy was to the creek. So I realized that it wasn't like up behind me, it was across from me, straight out. So that's where I said to Steve, I said, hey, Steve, you're looking for Bigfoot. I think we got some up here. And that's where it kind of started out with, is that, I decided, well, I like to adventure and stuff. Let's see about getting back into this and proving what I seen a long time ago at 17. So that's how that started.
Just a kind of time frame for the audience here. I think it's important that we have a time frame. When you first discovered those tracks at the early part of your story, how old were you? What year was that, and where were you?
Oh, that was about 1977. I was, like I said, I was about 17. That was a year I turned 17. I was out hunting a little northwest of Reardon, along the Spokane River, between Davenport and Reardon. And the amazing thing was that, I heard stories of farmers talking about seeing something tall walking across their fields and stuff.
Okay, so you had heard some things.
So there was stories about it, but, like I say, I'm a realist. I got to see to believe. I want to make sure it's plausible. I've always been that way. I like science. I like knowing stuff, so I like to do investigations or building things, or that's where I'm at with getting into this research, is that I want to prove to myself just as much as everybody else wants to prove whether there is or there is not a existence of Bigfoot. So I think my main thing is that I just because I've seen those tracks a long time ago and what research I've done today, I want to take it further. I want it to be as clear and precise as possible. So I've been working on a lot of different things, and that's how I kind of met Marshall, is that we were going to do that town hall Bigfoot and see what we heard up in the area up there. And so Steve had asked me about who was a good filmmaker that I knew of, and that's to get in with Marshall. He actually had a couple of short clip films up at our theater, which are really great. And I said, Steve, you want a good cameraman? Here's your guy. So I asked Marshall if he would be interested in this. So this is how Marshall and I started out.
Now, is year of the sounds, when you described your second incident where you were up prospecting and you heard the sounds, what kind of sound was that again?
Well, it was at first I
in
thought.
the year. How long ago was that?
It's about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, somewhere in there, 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't document or anything like this, but it was just the sound was like at first I thought somebody was like drunk coming down the road or something like this and got lost, and it was like, woohoo! But the second time, when the first time it woke me up, or I was like, what was that? And then the second time it did it again, same sound. But I could tell where it was coming from was across the creek, and it was like on the hillside, and there's no way there's anybody that's going to be on the other side of the hillside because there's no roads coming into it. It's a hard trek. I've been up on that side before, doing my prospecting. So, it was just not. It was just not something that I could identify as somebody out there.
Well, I think the point to be made now is that you have been out in the outdoors many times. So this, what an owl sounds like. A lot of the normal sounds in the area. Yeah. So this was definitely something that sounds like that was out of the norm that you've ever heard before.
Correct. When I was down in Georgia at my son's reception, there's a Bigfoot museum down there. So I thought I'd stop in, the family stopped in. They had a lot of recordings of people have made recordings of supposed Bigfoots out in the wild. Okay, so you're hearing all these roars and everything else. And one of the tapings, it had a woohoo, and I mean it wasn't like owl. Owl goes whoo,
Right.
You know,
Like a Texan guy, woohoo!
yeah. This is like somebody was like celebrating or something like that out there, but it was a big woohoo.
Yeah, Texas.
You know, so I can't be serious on not knowing what it is, but
Yeah.
I also know that it wasn't what I thought it would be. You know,
Right, right,
Sure.
right. Well, wonderful, wonderful. And what about you, my friend?
Well, actually, I wasn't interested in Bigfoot. I mean, I had heard stories growing up all my life. And then when Bill asked me if I would film the town hall meeting for you guys, I started hearing all these testimonies. And I thought, well, that's cool. It's interesting. And then, of course, we got done with the town hall meeting. I finished the videos and went about doing my filmmaking and went up for a hike. And I came across, it was like early in the year, there was still snow up at the higher elevations. And I came across some footprints up there. And so, of course, I filmed them. But I got to tell you, it was surreal. It was like I had never seen any footprints before from a Bigfoot. And, I mean, they were, in the film, my boot fit in the track with lots of room up in front.
And this is like just right outside of Medellin Falls, right?
Yeah, this is less than a mile from Medellin Falls. This is on the, what would be the east side of Medellin Falls. You just go a couple blocks down the road from my house, you start heading up a hill to a plateau, start going around the mountain, and there they were. But even while I'm sitting there filming it and looking at it, I was still going, I can't, it's hard to fathom, you know? It's really surreal that you're actually seeing what you're seeing. I mean, even afterwards, I posted, I'm not sure what it is, but,
Yeah.
you know.
So are you hooked on Bigfoot? Are you?
Yeah, I'm really interested in it now. You know, I've been filming the Extreme Expeditions team all summer, and we've gone on 3 campouts, and then, of course, Bill and I have been going up and setting up just about every week. We're setting up cameras and stuff like that. It's go ahead.
Yeah, you're hitting on the second topic I had, because I wanted to ask you. You know, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing up there? Because it seems quite extensive. You're putting out cameras. You want to give us a rundown on what you're doing up there?
well, certainly. Marshall, being the main guy filming all this, he's kind of following what I'm doing and filming, and I'm basically trying to change, or what, like I say, I like logistics and doing things a little different. I've always been a person that looks at things differently. I've created a couple of different things, gotten patents on them. You know, I'm always constantly building stuff. I've got a corner in my garage that, you know, it's like I start building stuff. If it doesn't work right, I throw it in a corner until I get it right. So when everybody's going out, I'm always seeing all these shows, you know, and everything on how they're setting up their Bigfoot capturing equipment and everything else. I'm looking at it in a little bit different ways on what I think would be a proper way to capture wildlife, Bigfoot, or whatever we can. So Steve's kind of following the exploits of, it's kind of a, like I said about throwing stuff in the corner. We're starting out doing one thing, moving to another. I won't discuss completely our latest and greatest, but the way that we're setting up the cameras, because I listen to a lot of these different people that talk about what they think, what they don't think, you know, and everything's theory. You know, you always got to remember it's all theory until it's proven. You know, that's the great thing about science is, you know, you may have one direct thing, but if you add a little difference to it, then it changes the outcome. So I think that that I listen to all these different people, what they say, you know, what Bigfoot does, how they move, you know, but there's nobody that really has a understanding of exactly, you know, it's like finding prints and stuff, you know. Go ahead.
No, that leads me to something, because you brought, we're going to get into some evidence thing, but you brought in a couple of things that I thought were interesting that we wanted to take a look at. And one of them is this, but you'd sent me in this photo of this track, and I understand you just kind of saw this in passing and you didn't think it was significant in any way?
Well,
We're not saying it is a Bigfoot track, but when was this?
I wouldn't say significance. It's just that, plausibility, when I looked at that, I was interested. Trust me, it piqued my interest. The thing about that is it's not a bear track because it's the hill in front takes away from that and the width and everything. But at the time, we didn't have anything to do any castings or anything on it, and it was wet and it was right on the road. So we found evidence, but it was going to be gone by the time we get back because it's a road that people do travel up and down once in a while. So Marshall and I, we did take pictures. Marshall did photographs and stuff, and it is a little bit out of character because if you look on the where the toe, it looks kind of like it might have a hammer toe or bunion or whatever you want to call it, which that's typical in some of the Bigfoot tracks that have been out there. You'll see that right out there where it punches out a little bit. So what is it? I don't know. I can't say.
Yeah, it's not definitive, but it certainly is interesting. Now, we don't really know the scale of this in the photos because as I recall in our conversation earlier, it was kind of just taken in passing, but roughly what was the length on this?
It was actually what I took off my shoe, and so Marshall got my foot against it. It's actually a little bit shorter than my foot, but a lot wider. So, and I've got a narrow foot.
So. And the other thing was this was like he said, it was in the road, but it was on the side of the road opposite of where people camp, and it was spring, summertime, and
it was.
It was small enough that you would think, well, it was just somebody with a wide, small foot. I wear 8.5 is probably about 8.5 size 9, and so we filmed it because it was interesting. But there was reasonable doubt because the campsite was right there. Somebody could have been just stepping in the mud as they got in their truck or something. But
somebody with a club foot.
Yeah. But the main thing is, I didn't run out and go, look, I found this Bigfoot track. I like I said, I want to make sure that my main goal is to have like a triangle, the fire triangle. You've got fuel, you got oxygen, you got heat. Okay, this is why I want to look at how I work to try to find Bigfoot, if we can find something like that. I want pictures, definite pictures, not blurry pictures. I mean, God bless the people out there that do have those pictures because it does show evidence. You see something walking along a hillside or a quick blur. I've seen some really good pictures, but they're always off in the woods. And I've taken pictures of bear, 20 feet away from me, and you can't even see the bear, but the human eye can. But it's funny how a human eye can see something, but a camera can't always catch that stuff because a camera takes.
It's not always going to get the depth and stuff like
and
that.
And this is where I'm working at my camera system. It's going to be a definite.
And I want to talk about that. That leads us to when you talk about cameras. You also sent me I want you to tell me about this. I thought this was great because this is one of the best little video clips. Let me start that over again. Now, tell us about this.
Well, this is one of our camera traps, and what this is where I want to have a definite. As you can see, there's the ground. You got the bear. You can tell that's a bear. There's no mistakes of trees or anything else in the way. And this is one of my camera traps that, like I said, everybody goes out and sets a camera trap up onto a tree. But we're doing a little bait here with some peanut butter. I got it up high enough to where he can't reach it, and so it's enticing him. But these are the kind of pictures that there's you're not going to get. Yeah. You're not going to get that. Oh well, there's a Bigfoot out there, and you see it disappear in the trees. We're doing setups to where you're not going to have that mistake of not knowing what it is.
You can tell a couple things from this. Is first of all, you can tell your angle is not traditional. It looks like you're facing directly down on this thing.
Yeah, our cameras are definitely a little bit different than putting them up against a tree. Another thing too is the reason why I think this is going to be a system that's going to work is that you can actually see the hair moving on the bear there. I mean, these are kind of things that will also define what we have. You can see the nose, the ears, the coloration. Look at the center there. You can see he's white into it. Look at his claws. You can even see his claws. We've actually had a couple of different sets of our cameras that have captured a few other bears, but this is kind of like the most fun one because, you know, we had him actually right in the camera, and there's no way to say it's a bear and it's gone. We also, just to bring back my camera trap system, we actually had a vulture that came in and peeked around. You could see kind of part of him, but you could see his head like look up and into it, and then he was gone. So.
Yeah, well, I feel sorry for that guy. Did he get, well, maybe I don't. Did he get the peanut? Did he get the?
No, not completely, but he did get another, some of my other baits, and we're doing different smell baits and things like this.
Yeah.
I won't talk about everything we've used out there, but you know, we're doing attractants, attractive baits, and it's been kind of fun because Marshall and I will be out there and we're doing our setup, and Marshall's filming. Finally I looked over at Marshall. I said, "Hey man, can I have some help here?" You know, Marshall's like, "But I'm filming you." You know, and that's, you know. So Marshall and I, we're having a good time out there and stuff. You know, and it's you know, our working relationship out there in the field is it's you know, we're knowing what each other's doing now. You know. Before it's like I'm trying to do something, I about step into his camera. Now he's knowing about, you know, setting the camera a little bit back so we can get a.
Yeah.
But Marshall's got some real great shots of what we're doing, which we'll be showing that in the film, some of that.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Now, you brought something with you. You brought in a track. I'd like to take a look at that track you've got there and maybe tell us briefly about where you got that and the story on that.
This is not my track. This is a friend of mine's track that when we had that Bigfoot town hall meeting that
Should I move?
no, I'm just trying to get it a little bit centered. Okay, so she had been up in the same area where we're at, and this is what kind of attracted us to this area, is that she told stories about her Bigfoot research. So she brought this track in during the town hall meeting and said, "Bill, I've got this." And you know, being a friend of hers for quite a few years, she never talked about what she had found. So when she brought this track in, I called in a couple of the people that were at the show, and they started looking it over, and they were like fascinated because of the clarity of the track, the dermal ridges and things like this. I taped this track up a little bit, so that way it would, you know, you could look closer at the main part of the
Now,
track.
When was this casted?
This cast was in, actually we looked it up this morning, and it was 1999.
1999 is when it was casted.
Yeah, okay. So around 1999, 98, you know, so, you know, that was probably about 10 years ago up in the same area. So
In the same area.
Yeah, and then there was another casting that she had gotten, and they had gotten quite a few castings. But the reason why I taped up the edges of it, because I wanted to have you be able to see the main part, because you know, when people do castings, you know, they're always holding them up and you got all that casting on the outside. So I was trying to.
Now, before you transition to the other cast, what I've got here is Bill had actually taken a number of photos of this track, close-ups. He did blacklight and things like this, and you'll hear a lot where they'll talk about the authenticity of tracks. Based on, you know, the dermal ridges, which is basically
the skin patterns.
The skin patterns in the foot. And if you'll notice on the close-up on this one, you can clearly see that was a bare foot. You can see the dermal ridges. And I thought that was really significant about this track. And that's a close-up of it, because you probably can't see it when you're holding it up. And also the way that the toes are splayed out like that.
If you hold it up again, if I was going to hoax because it was funny, that's a lot of work. Look at the small toe, how it's bent out at almost a 45-degree angle.
Sticks out a little bit.
And then, of course, somewhere along that big toe, it kind of looks like a bone, a bunion, whatever you want to call it. And then, then the splay between the big toe and the next toe. I mean, I can see why people would want to do hoax, especially teenage boys, because it's funny.
I was really honored that she told me that I could go ahead and take this and hang on to it. and she wants me to carry forward the work that she did. She's got paperwork of when they went out and the areas they went to and the things they seen and the sounds and stuff. A really nice detailed journal of what she did. You know, a good researcher. You know, and that's.
But all this time, she's pretty much just kept it to herself, so to speak. Maybe not with close friends, but
what she did is that she did some good research, and she had some famous Bigfoot people that kind of said hoax or whatever else, you know. So, you know, for somebody to go out and honestly do this kind of work, you're always going to have naysayers. And
absolutely.
then I also can think that, you know, it's like me. I could tell a real quick story. I went down to Mexico. We went out fishing. Okay. We decided that the captain goes, "Hey, well, you want to go marlin fishing?" We, you know, of course we do. You know, we're out in the boat and everything. Got a 520-pound marlin down there, a record marlin. Okay. We got it back to shore, and we had guys that, you know, like pretty well off and everything else go, "We've been going out and doing this for like 20 years and never did that," you know. So is it going to be me that's going to find the evidence of Bigfoot, a person that's been out there for 30 years, or it could be just a normal family out camping that may come across the evidence? You know, we don't know who's going to come across the evidence. That's going to be the defining moment of Bigfoot research. You know, it's fair game out there, you know, but don't, you know, everybody's got their own, as I look at it, everybody's got their own theories and everything. No theory is right, no theory is wrong, but if everybody continues to move forward and do this, I do think because of the cell phones, you know, a lot more electronics out there, and like you were talking about, Mitch, is, you know, like cameras in the windows of cars and stuff, dash cams. You know, and people kind of looking for evidence, not just always looking, but just, you know, are more aware of these kind of things, you know, like the shows that we see nowadays, you know. You see a lot of families that take pictures of something turning woods. What I'm trying to do, and the Extreme Expeditions team, is to bring it together to where, like the bear that we've seen, you know, that's evidence, hard evidence. That's not evidence of something walking away.
Right.
This is what we're trying to do.
Nice.
You know?
And if that was a Bigfoot under there, I mean, you would have like this
yeah,
close-up
yeah.
of his
You know,
face,
oh my
and
gosh, yeah.
hands and feet, and
Now, have you
standing there.
have you had any luck with a Bigfoot on a cam yet?
No, we haven't.
Sneaky suckers.
You know, but here's the cool thing. Where we're at, the cool thing is that where we're putting up our cameras, where we're doing our baits, where we're doing our research, we have, from 1999, we have footprints. We have a small footprint like this from around that same time era, I think.
A mini foot.
A mini foot. I can't tell you what the date is on this because I didn't really look close, but it's the same researcher that did all this work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this foot is in the same area where you've seen that
No.
footprint that Marshall and I took.
Now, that track is interesting too, and I'll tell you why. You know, most people, when they criticize track castings and tracks, they'll say, well, it's too small. It's not big. It's not like 18 inches or this or that other thing. But, you know, Bigfoot isn't born with an 18-inch foot. You know, it's got to grow. We do have juveniles. They do have young ones and things like that, so you'll come
Family,
across
yeah.
them. Now, what I think is significant about that track is in the time that we spent up in Stevens County, Washington in particular, we haven't found any tracks, at least I personally, have not found any tracks that have been much larger than, well, the average track is between 9 and 13 up there. And that track resembles very, very much the same type of tracks that I've been exposed to out of Stevens County, which, if you notice, they're not really huge. Now, the configuration of that foot that we have found up there is different than what we're finding than the big one. You know, how the toes are splayed out, not necessarily the size, but the outline of the track. How the foot is, it seems to be a little bit different. And so I'm not sure what that's all about, but I just wanted to point that out. So, wonderful. Now, the next thing I wanted to move on to is let's talk about the film. Let's talk about that film.
Talk
And
about it.
how about if I play the trailer
Okay.
and and tell us a little bit about this film?
Three men. Two other men.
Good call.
Good call.
Well, 14.
And the guy with a camera.
This thing is not recording.
All right.
Searching for Sasquatch.
Sasquatch does like to smoke cigarettes. Primarily the adults. They discourage the younger juveniles, but it's reported they do smoke. So I think we'll leave a few smokes and some wooden matches. Don't ever leave a lighter. They don't know how to use it. That's a true story. That's what I was told by the storyteller from the Colville track.
Really?
Yeah, he said they smoke cigarettes. They like cigarettes. So leave them a couple.
There are a lot of people who do Sasquatch research who almost would like to apparently be a Sasquatch. For me, I don't want to be a Sasquatch. I'm happy being a Homo sapien.
When it's pitch black, you can't see. They can see just fine. There's something that's moving around us. I have no idea what it is.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Good job, Marshall.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's another thing too that I could bring up that, you know, if you get too serious about the Sasquatch hunting, it probably could drive you crazy. And you know, we try to bring a little humor into it. You know, we're joking all the time when we're doing our work. You know, and you'll see one take there where Marshall got a little bloodied there. We were going through some thick brush, and it wasn't a nice little trail to walk down. You know, so there is serious things that we got to watch out for. You know, like being out along the creeks or cliffs, rocks. You know, where we go. You know, we got to be careful because you know it can be dangerous work. So, you know, my main goal is, you know, I like safety. I think safety is a very important part of this. You know, how we can do things better safely, working with our camera systems, and you know, making sure that we all come home at night, or when we do come home, that it's you know, we had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's refined the camera system really well. It's pretty amazing. I mean, when we first started out, hanging those cameras was taking us a couple hours a piece. We had the goal of going out and hanging 4 cameras, you know, in a morning, and come back at 3 in the afternoon. We only hung 2. Now he's changed it and refined it to where we can put up a camera, find a location, set it up, and we're out of there in 20, 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's getting easier, and
Yeah, so
we like I said, there's things I won't really talk about right now on how the cameras are set up, but we've done a lot of testing and revamping, to where we've got some really good pictures of we tell them about the flying squirrel that we got the other night.
yeah, we one of them we apparently set up in the middle of a squirrel colony. And we've got it mounted on the tree, kind of facing down, and this limb is sticking out, and these squirrels are running around setting the camera off. And then there's a shot where a squirrel comes out and immediately jumps out and he spreads his wings and he flies, and I'm like, what the heck?
That's awesome.
I thought they were regular small squirrels, but they're apparently flying squirrels.
He must have
And
realized
he
it was
just
a camera.
Yeah, you can just see him glide right down in the
ominous.
camera and hit the ground like it was nothing.
We've gotten quite a few deer, and like I said, my main goal is that when you can see the animal moving, you can actually see the way the fur moves, the muscling and everything
Yeah,
else.
I like that. I mean, it's unique because generally, you've got game cameras they don't have that kind of view. Most people, I don't know anybody besides you guys that are having them at such an angle to where you're going to see the definition of things and the clarity of it and comprehensively what's going on. Because, usually they're taped to a tree, and all you're getting is a glimpse, or you're only getting one angle. So when something's moving, plus you've got something dancing around there, it's like, I'll see a flash of something on a game camera. It just gives the view, the angle, the clarity of it seems to be much more
Well, you
significant.
definitely have that point of reference.
Yeah, point of
Because
that's what I'm looking
The
for.
food is here.
Wonderful. Yeah,
I mean,
right.
You know what
Yeah.
height
We're-
that is.
yeah.
we're
And you
setting
know
up
the
the-
distance to the ground, and then you can kind of
Yeah.
estimate how close.
That's good.
And so that's missing in everything else. Any sort of a point of reference
Now,
in a lot of things.
Gear-wise, you've got thermals and FLIR, all the
Yeah,
standards.
we've got nighttime, daytime. We've got nighttime pictures of animals. Like I said, how we're setting these cameras up now, it's bing, bang, boom, and we're in and out. We're able to get back in and take our film images off, and within minutes they're ready to go again. So, and it's and like I said, safety is the number one thing. So it doesn't put Marshall or I in a predicament of what we were doing before at the very beginning to set up our cameras. So
Yeah, wonderful. Now the film, when do you expect that to be completed? When is it?
Well, I just started working on the editing. I'm actually still going through and writing down the dialogue. Before I got into doing, this is like my first documentary. And so before, I've always, I've written a script, I've done the storyboards, I visualize what I want to shoot, the angle I want to shoot. I know where the story's going and how it's going to play out ahead of time when I go to shoot the film. But with the documentary, you don't know the story until you're done shooting it. And you actually have to dig in and find the story within all the film that you've shot. And right now I've got 2 terabytes of film that we've shot since the, when was it, March? That we had the town hall meeting. And we're still going out every week, and I'm shooting Bill, putting up the cameras and checking the cameras, because I want that shot when his eyes bug out and he goes, "We got one! We got a Bigfoot!" But if I don't have the camera rolling, I'll miss it. So
I could tell you kind of a funny story that we were coming out from one of our camera trap sets, and I look up, and here comes a wolf down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, so I stop and I go woof, woof, woof like this, and Marshall goes, "What are you woofing about?" And then he's because
You're woofing about the wolf.
woofing about the wolf.
Yeah.
And he sees it, and we're going like, "Oh, this is cool," because not everybody sees. I mean, this is what
it
would
was
you
a good-sized wolf.
What would you say? How far away? Maybe.
Oh, maybe 50 feet, 40 feet.
Yeah, I would say it was that
pretty
close. So we
close.
had the absolute awesome sight of a wolf.
Yeah.
And I looked over at Marshall. I said, "Did you get that?" He goes, "Just a second." He checked his camera. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The camera's battery
The
was
battery
dead.
died just a few minutes. I had a hard
Always-
hat on with a GoPro.
Okay.
So we were going to each other.
As soon as I
Damn
looked
it.
at it, I was supposed to be getting a shot of it, and the camera had died. So
Now, I could also bring up another thing that when I set up one of the camera traps, and we came back to check it, and we were looking at it, and I looked over at Marshall, and I said, "Damn it." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "I didn't turn it on." So,
Well, that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But back to your
On the-
question.
Yeah.
When will the film be done? I am trying to get it done by this January, February 2021.
Wonderful.
But that's like being really optimistic, because there's a lot of work ahead of me.
Yeah, there is a lot of work. You know, when
Yeah.
people say we go out and you shoot a film, and they say, well, they want to see it in 3 months. But I always tell them, look, mellow out. You know, the sequel to Blade Runner was actually started in 1996, and when did it get released?
Yeah.
When did it get completed? A year ago.
But
Yeah,
what I can say about this film that's coming out, we have some evidence that is going to be amazing. It's not just us going through the woods. We've got evidence of
That's
some
what
things.
we want to see.
Yeah, we will be showing some evidence that I don't know if we want to talk about this or not, but I'm not going to really say more. But I'm going to say one thing: we've got some pretty good hard evidence. We got one part of that triangle so far.
Wonderful. That's exciting
And
to
this
hear.
is what we're working for. We've got, like what we're seeing there, we've got some of the same stuff, and it's going to be really wonderful to see. And we've got some really good people that were out there working on this. Some people have been in the field for a long time. So, you know, when these people are getting excited about what they're seeing, I'm getting excited about it because, like I said, I'm kind of a realist. I like to look at stuff and go, could be, maybe not, you know. But when I started doing like what we found, and I started seeing some other signs that there was something there, and that's very important. Is, you know,
Yeah.
just like that one track we showed there. Well, there's one track. You know, was there any more? Well, it went from mud to hard pack, you know. But
Yeah.
these were a series, and this is what was important when we found them.
Yeah. Because people think it's easy to find tracks. You're lucky
Yeah.
to find a track because, you know, with different surfaces and stuff like that, to come across a track that's castable is, you know, I've only casted 2 tracks in my entire life.
Right.
That I found that were actually castable. I mean, that just happened to be in the right ground, you know, at the right time of the year to where the imprint was made, and they had to be relatively fresh. So it's really insignificant. Well, this is all exciting. You know, we're about out of time here. So I just want to do. Mitch, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm just anxious to see the movie, see the
Yeah,
film.
we're looking forward
Sounds
to
like
it.
you got some very good stuff.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to finish up with real quick?
No.
Okay.
Without giving away secrets.
Yeah, don't
the
get.
hard
Yeah,
part.
They don't want to give away too
I
much
can
of the
tell
film.
that you want to say more, but you're
Yeah,
holding
you
back
know,
on the good stuff.
we could go on. I didn't even get through half the questions that I had.
Oh, well, let me say this. My friend Will Ulmer from Stephen County Bigfoot, he said something to me when we were on the expeditions. And he's been doing this for like 11 years, going out every summer, going camping, looking for evidence. And he said that what we found this year and what I filmed this year with you guys, he said that's amazing and that's really rare because you can go out every weekend, every summer for years and not find what we found this year.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
It's going to be cool.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Very awesome.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we're out of time, and I just want to thank you again for making the trip down here to be on the show, and wish you the best of luck, and look forward to seeing the film.
We're hoping to take and find some more. And, you know, it's wintertime. Kind of slowed down a little bit on everything. We pulled everything out of the areas right now because the snow's starting to dump. Going to be dumping heavy in those areas. But we got some other areas that we're going to be working on that we know we can get into. So it's not over yet. We might just have a whole lot more surprises on a film coming up here in the future. Let's hope that we can find those surprises.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to hearing updates on your research and investigation up there.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks again. And thank you to our lovely studio audience. Well, we've come to the end of our show, and I got to tell you, Mitch, I think that was a great one.
For the first show, it's far better than I thought it would be, and it's just going to get better because we're going to put the word out. We're going to have a lot of guests, and
Well, I thought they had a lot to talk about.
Oh,
They're
definitely.
doing a lot of stuff up there. I'm excited to see the additional evidence that they have, and they've got me really intrigued about seeing the film.
Definitely.
But the number one thing that I'm most happy with about those guys is I noticed that you didn't reach for the bullshit button not one time during the whole show.
Not needed. Not needed.
No.
I do have some manners, and I probably won't do that in person, but people are wondering what that means.
Yeah.
But stay tuned. The bullshit button will be used.
Yeah, we have a feeling in the next, in at least the the 4th or 5th episode of the show will probably be, I'm going to have to take the button away from Mitch. But anyways.
That's a good idea. We may just have a whole episode. That may be good. That might be a good topic. Just to pull together all the BS that's out there. And
what do you think? Should we have a BS episode where all we do is talk about all the BS out there?
I think that'd be good.
That might be a good idea.
We could actually have people call in. But that's a different day.
That's for another time.
Yep.
Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us. And I'm hoping that you'll stay tuned for next week's episode. We have another very experienced and exciting guest to be on the show. We're very pleased to announce that we'll have Kevin Llewellyn, who is with the BFRO. He's been doing Bigfoot research for a number of years. Very good at it, very thorough, and has a lot of interesting and intriguing information to share about Bigfoot activity here in Idaho and a few other places. We're going to save that for the show. So for the time being, be well, be kind to one another, and we'll see you next week.
Very good.